त्वमेव सर्वं मम देवदेव श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तिसुदेशिकेन्द्रं द्वैपायनं सूत्रकृतं मुनीन्द्रं श्रीशङ्करं भाष्यकृतं यतीन्द्रं मद्देशिकञ्चापि नमामि विद्यै। ओम नमो ब्रह्मादिभ्यो ब्रह्मविद्यासम्प्रदायकर्तृभ्यो वंशऋषिभ्यो महद्भ्यो नमो गुरुभ्यः। सर्वोपप्लवरहितप्रज्ञानगणः प्रत्यगर्तो ब्रह्मैवाहमस्मि। Pranams everyone. So what I thought was I'll take the session for about 45 minutes and then leave the 15 minutes for the question answers. But please make sure that you put your questions on the chat so that we can actually, let us not unmute anybody during the class. So put your questions on the chat and I will pick it up from there, and then I'll try to answer within this class. If it is relevant for this section, then I will answer now. If it is something that will be covered as one of the topics in future classes, I will ask you to wait until we come to that section. I hope that's fine with you, all of you. I would appreciate if you can turn off your videos and also turn off your mics. Thank you. Okay, so last week we were seeing Purusharthas. Purusharthas are human goals. And we said different people have different goals, but Shastras have actually been able to categorize them into four: Artha, Kama, Dharma and Moksha. Artha is what? Name, fame, power, position, all these things. Wealth, bank balance, anything related to money and personal fame comes under Artha. Kama is things that are related to sensory experiences, good food, good music. I want to go out and for travel. If I want to go out for travel, all these things come under Kama. Wherever I will have to use my sense organs to experience this world and I take pleasure out of it, that is comes under that is called as Kama. Then Dharma, we saw Dharma has got many meanings to it. In this context, the meaning is Punya. So Dharma here is Punya. And then we said that the last one is Moksha. Moksha is liberation. Liberation from what? Liberation from samsara. What is samsara? Samsara is the problems that we face in our life. The problems that I feel I'm inadequate, or I feel that I don't have this, or the fact that I get angry, or I get hatred in me, or I have this pride, or anything where I feel incomplete is all called as samsara. And moksha means, moksha is getting liberation, getting liberated from all these problems. Not only that, moksha also means moksha also means getting emotional freedom. Today, everybody would want us to actually have freedom from, we want to be independent. We don't want to be dependent on anybody, whether it is financially, physically, and not only that, we also want ourselves to be emotionally independent. So moksha is about emotional independence also. So I don't need to rely on somebody else to provide me happiness. So the moment I give somebody else the power to make me happy, then I'm also giving them the power to make me sad. So moksha is about getting liberated from that. Of course, moksha also means not getting reborn, not getting rebirth. One of the things that we all, or most of the sadhus are looking forward is to not to get back into this world, because this world has got a lot of issues. Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says this world is dukkhalayam, temple of sorrow. So people do not want to get back. Of course, we feel this happiness, intermittent happiness. We feel this intermittent happiness over a life of sorrow. So what we remember is what we will actually be able to recollect. So liberation from this samsara means liberation from this human problems. Now we talked about these 4 goals: Artha, Kama, Dharma and Moksha. Artha, Kama and Dharma are called as preyas. Another technical term, preyas. And Moksha is called as Shreyas. Preyas means something that is liked, likable. If I like something, I call it is by preyas. Shreyas means what is good. So what we like generally is Artha, Kama and Dharma. Of course, Artha and Kama, the most of the people would like only Artha and Kama. Only some section of people would like Dharma. Moksha, the number of people who like Moksha or who's pursuing Moksha is very minimal. And that is called as Shreyas. Shreyas means that which is good for us. So, what we understand is amassing wealth, all these things, is earning fame, all these things will give transient pleasure but will not give us any sense of fullness or completeness. Moksha is a stage where I am fully contented, I am fully happy, I don't feel wanted on any count. So whereas whatever we do in this life, in this world, wherever we are trying to amass wealth or actually get a job or get that promotion or get that particular person in our life, all these things will give pleasure, no doubt, but it is all transient in nature. And what Shastra says is, Shastra says the Artha, Kama and Dharma have 3 doshas, 3 faults. There are 3 limitations. And these 3 limitations are number 1, pain or dukkham. Pain or dukkham. Whatever I need to achieve, if I have to achieve something in my life, I will have to go through some pain. Suppose if I want to get good marks in my university and then I study, then I will have to stay awake for long periods of time. I may have to actually skip my food may not be in right times. I may have to actually go through some bit of pain to achieve something. Just like a sports person, if he wants to achieve something great in his life, he will have to go through pain. He will have to put lots of effort in the gym and in the practice sessions. Rain or sunshine, he will have to put in effort. So, and whatever we do, even if we achieve it, to retain it, we will have to go through again some amount of pain. Even if I want to get somebody in my life, I want to impress them and I actually try, I will have to go through some pain. And then to be able to have them in my life, I will have to go through some pain. And not only that, what Shastra says is, if they leave, because none of it is permanent. What Artha or Kama is not permanent. Wealth we can have today, it might actually leave us tomorrow. In Bhajagovindam, Bhagavad Pada says, Harati nimeshat kalat sarvam. Within a matter of second, it can vanish. Ma kuru dhanajana yavvana garvam harati nimeshat kalat sarvam. The fame, the people around me, the power, the position, it can be today, it can be with me, but tomorrow it could be gone. And he includes yavvana also. Yavvana means youth. Some people have this pride that I am young, this person is old. That also we should have, because everybody will go through that stage. So that pain is always there, and even if other problem with the pain is once to attain you will have to go through some pain, to retain that you will have to go through some pain, and when it is leaving you, you will have pain as well. Forget leaving that relation, leaving or that particular possession that I have, leaving me, I will have pain. Even if I think that this person will not be with me tomorrow, I will get pain. Even the thought will give us pain. So those are the first limitation or first dosha of artha and kama and dharma, which is dukkham. The second one is dissatisfaction, atripti. The issue is whatever I achieve, I might have some satisfaction, some contentment, but that seems to be only temporary. Because after some time I feel that I will have to achieve again. Suppose if I am working in an office, I look for that promotion. The moment I get promotion, I am so happy. But after 6 months or so, that happiness vanishes. I am actually looking for my next appraisal, for my next promotion, for my next bonus. So today I watch something, I am feeling very happy. Today I go to that restaurant, I am feeling very happy, I am satisfied and contented. After 1 month or 1 week also, I feel that I feel unhappy with with this life. I want to go out and eat again. So this is anything, this artha or kama is not going to give me permanent satisfaction. It's not going to give me contentment throughout. So that is the second dosha, dissatisfaction or atripti. Then the third dosha is dependence. It creates a bandham. So the moment I actually feel that this person is going to give me happiness, now I become attached to this person. It creates a bandham, a dependence. Now this person is now holding the power to make me happy or unhappy. Or forget the person, even if, for example, in a hot day, I feel that I need an air conditioner. Now the air conditioner, if there is no power or if the air conditioner is not working, now I feel unhappy because I've been so used to this. So this bandham, it creates bandham. So those are the limitations of artha, kama and dharma. What are those three doshas? I'll just repeat. Dukkham, atripti, bandham. Pain, dissatisfaction and dependence. But Shastra does not say that you shouldn't go for these things. We should have these goals also. But what we should not forget is this is an intermediary goal. My final goal should always be moksha. I should not bet my entire life on gaining this artha and kama alone. So what is that? So people ask, how do you rate success? How do you define success? Oh, I need to have a house here. I need to have a bungalow there. I need to have this much of bank balance. I need to be having enjoying by a beach. That is my life's goal. Now, if you think that is going to be the life goal, Shastra says, look, you can have this, but if that is your final goal, then do understand that you will have to go through all these three, which is dukkham, atripti and bandham. So this is, Shastra says, the final goal should always be moksha. And the problem for us is this desire that we have in our mind is never ending. Because as I said, 15 years back, if somebody had asked what your desires were, and if you had listed 100 desires, and if the same person asks you to list your desires now, the number of desires out of the 100, maybe 50 would have been already achieved. But if I write down the list, there would be another 100 or 200 more. So the desires keep expanding. There is no respite. The desires keep coming. So the problem is, and what is happiness? Happiness is, if there is a formula for happiness, happiness is equal to number of desires that I have achieved, or the number of desires that I have fulfilled, divided by total number of desires. And the problem is, I might be achieving some of the desires I will not be able to fulfill, but my now total number of desires keep increasing. So which means I am essentially becoming unhappy every day as my desires increase. And that is the problem that we are not able to see. And that is what Shastras tell us. Look, there are certain limitations of this Artha and Kama. And last class I also said that human birth is a very invaluable one. It is not easy to get a human birth. Only humans can achieve moksha. That is the first one of the rules. Other beings cannot achieve moksha. But let me talk about this human birth. Now, is this human birth? I said it's very rare. Why it is very rare? Because our Shastra says there are 84 lakh species. 84 lakh species, not number of living beings. 84 lakh species. And there is actually a Subhashitam there. Stavaram Vimshatir Laksham. That is, the plant kingdom has got 20 lakhs. Jalajam Navalaksham. Water animals, there are 9 lakh species. Kurmascha Aikadasham Laksham. The insects or the reptiles which are both available, which can actually go between land and sea, there are 11 lakh species. Dasalakshancha Pakshinam. There are 10 lakh species of birds. Vimshalaksha Pashunamcha. There are about 30 lakh animals. Chaturlakshamcha Vanaraha. There are about 4 lakh species of monkeys. Tato Manushyata Prapti. It ends. So, only one among these 84 lakh species is Manushya Janma. So, even if you from a probability standpoint, as a species, it is 1 by 84 lakhs. Then if I count the individual Jeevarasis, because within that one species of one insect, there could be millions and billions of insects. So the probability is just too much to even put in on a computer. So moksha, so that is how rare this human birth is. And moksha, as I said, is only possible in human birth, because moksha requires some amount of free will. I have to exert my free will to achieve moksha. And this free will is available only in Manushya Janma. The others are all almost pre-programmed. Whether the plants or animals, they are mostly pre-programmed. They don't have this. We saw this buddhihi, that intellect that is needed for us to set goals and follow a path. That is not available with animals. And to get moksha, I have to study scriptures. And study of scriptures is also only possible in human birth. So, moksha, this human birth is very rare. And if we miss this human birth, we do not know when we will get another Manushya Janma. It is not that this Janma being a human birth is going to guarantee me the next life to be also a human birth. No. Shastra says you can go as an insect, you can go as a plant, you can be anything. So, and just by getting a Manushya Janma, it also does not guarantee me moksha. Just because I am born a human doesn't give me the access to moksha immediately. I will have to work for it. And how do I work for it? So I have to have this human birth, and then I have to have a longing for liberation. I will have to have a desire for moksha. And after having the desire for moksha, I will have to find a guru through whom I can achieve this scriptural knowledge and understand the sadhanas to pursue and to be able to get moksha. And to get this, whether to get a Manushya Janma, to get this desire for moksha, and to get a guru, we need a lot of punya. We need lot of punya. In Viveka Chodamani, Acharya Bhagavad says, Durlabam Trayame Vaitat. Durlabam Trayame Vaitat Deva Anugraha Hetukam. Deva Anugraha Hetukam Manushyatvam Mumukshutvam Mahapurusha Samshrayaha. So, Durlabam Trayame Vaitat. There are three things that are going to be very Durlabam. Durlabam means rare. One is Manushya Janma, then Mumukshutvam, the desire for moksha, and Mahapurusha Samshrayaha, the association and the guidance and the support from gurus. Those three are Durlabam. Why it is Durlabam? Because although I may be born as a human, first of all, getting a human birth is difficult. Even if I am born as a human, how many people are pursuing Shreyas? Unintelligent people will choose prayers. They will still go after how much I should, where should I buy my next property, how much is in the bank balance, how can I actually invest in stocks, where can I get my money from. So the focus of their life is always on prayers. Shastra doesn't say that you shouldn't earn. Shastra doesn't say that you shouldn't buy property. It doesn't say that. It just says understand the limitations and also understand that that cannot be your final goal. So unintelligent people choose prayers, whereas intelligent people choose Shreyas. And even if I want, so first thing is I will have to be born as a human, then I will have to have the desire for moksha, mumukshutva. Now, even after I have a desire for moksha, I should know what is moksha, first of all, because the term moksha itself is so confusing for a lot of people. A lot of people think different. Moksha they see is, some people think that by doing meditation I can achieve moksha. The light that I see the blue light that I see during meditation is moksha. Some people think that way. Or some people think that moksha is something that I can only achieve after I am dead. After my death, if I go to Vaikuntha or if I go to Kailasa, that is moksha. Or some people think that moksha is basically bringing that Kundalini Shakti from the bottom here to my head. So understanding what is moksha itself is there is a lot of confusion there. So to understand what is moksha and to understand what is the path to get to moksha, we need Mahapurusha Samshrayaha. We need association or guidance or support from gurus. But some people are in this path also. Some people have this access of Mahapurusha Samshrayaha or understand what is moksha and others, but yet they keep pursuing Artha and Kama also. That is also there. And because most of us are preoccupied with our body issues, family issues, day-to-day life, tomorrow what needs to be done, we are always constantly in that. That is because we have got our priorities wrong. And in same Viveka Chudamani, Acharya says, such people who have access to Vedanta and who have this knowledge that this is what leads to moksha, and yet if they actually focus only on their body and family issues, they are as good as committing suicide. They are destroying oneself, he says. So moksha is what we should be looking for, but having said that, I keep repeating it, it is not the only goal right now. Given that we all have grihasthas, we will have our things that have to be done from a family standpoint, from an individual standpoint, from a societal standpoint. we need to actually function in those roles also, but we should not lose the final destination. An example that is given is when we are actually traveling in a train, say from example Chennai to Delhi, you know that the final destination is Delhi, but in between at every station you may actually get down, get your coffee, get your breakfast, get vada, whatever you, or Nagpur, oranges, whatever, you get down and enjoy that. But at the same time you are always focused on where your final goal is, which is Delhi. So you don't want to miss the train. You will come back before the train leaves the station. So similarly, we should understand what our final goal is and work to see how we can reprioritize our desires. And this pursuit of this spiritual pursuit, this spiritual journey, as I said last week also, it is for self, it is for an individual. This knowledge is not going to change the people around us. This knowledge is not going to give me more fame. This knowledge is not going to make people call me, I'm a good man. This knowledge is for me to see, to evaluate myself, to see how I can go and get moksha. And this journey is going to be lonely. Nobody can actually come in the same path, share this path. No one, not even spouse, not parents. We came to this world alone. We will be going alone. In this life, we have some duties across. We have a family. We have to understand that there are duties to be done. There are some responsibilities we have to fulfill. That is for this life. And next life, if we are born as another individual, there will be another set of duties, another set of family, another set of responsibilities that we may have to do. So we need to understand that clearly. The difference, as I said, next Janma, we don't even know whether we will get a human birth. But in this human birth, we have free will, and because of free will, whatever I do will be counted as papa or punya. Whatever action I take, whatever thought that comes to my mind, whatever thought I take, whatever thought I bring to my mind, counts under papa and punya. What is papa and punya? I hope everybody knows it. Papa is basically loosely translated in English as sin. In the case of punya, there is no equivalent English word also. Because in other theologies, it's only everybody is born a sinner. We don't say that in our Shastras. We don't say we are born as sinners. We say you have got so much of punya that you have been able to get a human birth. So because of my free will, I have whatever action, whatever thought I bring to my mind, all my thoughts, words and deeds, manasam, vachikam, kayikam, all these three will result in papa or punya. So this spiritual journey is something that I have to take individually. I cannot compare. I cannot look for some company. I will have to evaluate myself on a regular basis. And I said, even the guru can only show the path. He can motivate. He can tell the sadhanas that need to be pursued. But the effort has to come from within. And the destination too can only be achieved alone. And so finally, let us not waste this human birth. So this is the introduction that I want to give in terms of Purusharthas. Now to the second topic. The second topic is called Shastras. Shastras explain. What are Shastras? Shashanat trayate iti Shastram. Shastras So the second topic is Shastras. Shastras means Shashana Trayate iti Shastram. What is Shastras? Shastras explain the sadhanas for attaining the Purusharthas. So I have these Purusharthas, human goals, which are these four, and Shastras tell me exactly how to attain each of these goals. It says not only for moksha, it also gives me the sadhanas. What should I pursue? What should I do to achieve all the four goals?
Can I request something? Can we address any questions that have already been raised for what we have gone through till now, and then move to Shastras if it is okay?
Yes, okay, we'll do that way. So let me look into the chat box. So the one question that came last week was what was samsara, which I thought I had addressed in the class today. Are there any questions now? Is it about avoiding dukkha that I should strive to break the cycle of birth? Or is it that not desiring moksha means continued loves for desires and hence rebirth, which is transient and not true? Yes, actually you can say both. If there is desire, I will get reborn. That is also true, because as long as there is karma pending, which is, we will see about this karma theory at the end, but as long as there is some karma which is pending, I will have to get reborn. And the only way to break the cycle is to break the karma cycle. Is it about avoiding dukkha that I should strive to break the cycle of birth? Yes, it is to avoid the dukkha, because today we are in a very comfortable position. We are first of all born as humans, and that too we are having a good life. We have food on the table, we have clothes, we have everything. And then there are so many others who don't. Now that is only in the human's birth. What about what about insects? What about those cows, dogs, stray dogs, and all those reptiles that are getting born? The life of some of them would have to go through misery. So the question is, do we want to have that life, or do we want to come out of this cycle, is the question. Now the choice is ours. Shastras do not say that everybody should pursue moksha, otherwise you will be rotting yourself, you will be rotting in hell. Shastras does not say that. Shastras do say that unintelligent people will choose prayas, intelligent people will choose shreyas. That is what Shastra says. Why at all ask for another birth in the first place? No, we don't ask for another birth. It is there. We, just like every time we are born, this is not in our hands. It is not in our hands to say what body I am going to get. Whether I am going to get a human body, whether I am going to get an animal body, insect body, plant body, is not in my hands. Whether who would be my parents is not in my hands. Which location I would be born is not in my hands. In fact, majority of my childhood is also not in my hands. So we do not ask for it. It is Ishvara who will decide this. That was a question from Neti. Yeah. Okay. I read in Karma Yoga, Lord Krishna. I try to avoid the words Lord, God as much as possible. I try to use the word Ishvara, Bhagavan. And even for Lord Krishna, I would say Sriman Narayana or Bhagavan Krishna. Okay, I read in Karma Yoga, Bhagavan Krishna, all actions and responses are the senses acting on their objects. We are not doing anything. Then how are we responsible for the good and bad karma when we don't have control over the body and soul? No, that is not what Krishna means there. Bhagavan Krishna does not mean that. We will come to that Bhagavad Gita when I actually explain that sloka. It is sense objects. When the sense objects are actually, what Krishna says there is, when the sense objects interact with the sense organs, nothing that we are not affected by it. That is what Krishna says. But there, when I say I am not affected when sense organs interact with sense objects, that I is not this body-mind complex that he wants us to take ownership on. He wants us to take an ownership on the Atma, which we are not right now. Right now we identify ourselves with this body and mind. As long as I am identifying myself with this body and mind, I will have to take responsibility for all the karmas that this body and mind does. I cannot escape from this karma. Can you put yourself on mute, please? Yeah. Okay, then the next question. What happens after we get moksha? What happens after we get moksha? After we get moksha, we become one with the God. Shouldn't say God, one with Ishvara, one with Bhagavan. Advaita Vedanta finally tells you that you are nothing but Ishvara. Tattvam Asi. It will end up there. So we will become one with Ishvara. There is no more birth for us. Okay. Are there any more questions? I hope I have answered all. Okay. So coming back to the next topic, Shastras. Shashanat trayate iti shastram. And there, Shas has two meanings, to command and to teach. In the word Shastram, Shas means two meanings, command and to teach. So Shastra means a literature which commands the human beings, in the initial stage and then teaches them in the later stages. So that is called as Shas. Tra means to save. And what Shastram does is, by commanding and teaching, it saves the human beings from all human problems. So what is the meaning of Shastram is that which commands and teaches, saving us from human problems, saving from the problems is called as Shastram. And Adi Shankara compares this Shastram to a mother, because just like a mother initially, when the child is not mature enough to understand, the child is commanded. The child is commanded by the mother, do this, do that. And sometimes the mother will even use a threatening tone. If you don't do it, you will not get it this. So that is how a mother trains the child. And then finally, when the child is actually big enough to understand, old enough to understand, when it becomes a boy or a girl, then slowly the commandment reduces and the mother starts teaching why it should be done that way. Similarly, the Shastram initially, for a person who is new, the Shastram will command. It will say, do this, do that. As we become mature, we will be able to understand the reasoning behind it, and the same Shastram will be more or less like teaching us for us. And this Shastram is divided into 6 our entire vast scriptural literature that we have can be presented in 6 layers or groups. The first and the foremost is the Vedic literature, also known as Vedas. They are called as Vedas in general. And the Vedas themselves are a very, very vast literature. The Vedas has got 2 parts to it. One is called as Veda Purva Bhaga. Veda Purva Bhaga and the Veda Anta Bhaga. The Veda Purva Bhaga, the initial portion of Vedas, or the first or the portion of the Vedas, it talks about how to fulfill Artha, Kama and Dharma desires. It tells you how to get name, fame, money, power, position. It tells you how you can enjoy. And then it also tells how you can get punya. So this portion is also called as Karma Kanda. Then the second portion or the final portion is called Veda Anta Bhaga. It is about discovering moksha. That is the final goal. So that portion is called as Jnana Kanda. So the first portion is Karma Kanda. The last portion is called as Jnana Kanda. And Upanishads come under Jnana Kanda. Upanishads is part of Vedas, in case if you don't know. All Upanishads form part of Vedas. Purva Bhaga, Veda Purva Bhaga is about fulfilling Artha, Kama and Dharma. It is also known as Karma Kanda. Kanda means portion, karma portion. And then Jnana Kanda is the Veda Anta Bhaga. Now the question is, who is the author of Vedas? Who wrote the Vedas? Who created these Vedas? We look upon Vedas as a revelation from the Ishvara himself. From Ishvara himself, Bhagavan has given us these Vedas. It is not authored by any human. Nobody wrote Vedas. It is not a product of human intellect. And that is why Vedas are also called as Apaurusheyam. Purusham, we saw Purusharthas. Purusharthas means humans. So Apaurusheyam means that which did not come from humans. Apaurusheyam. So then how, if it was not given by humans, then how did it reach us? So Ishvara revealed the Vedas through the Rishis. So it's like Ishvara or the Bhagavan is the transmitting station, and the Rishis are receiving this. So there are many Rishis in those days who have received these mantras that have been in the air. What they have been able to do is, by controlling their senses, by doing tapas, by doing this austerities and penance, they have got a special power through which they are able to receive all these signals and be able to give it to us. It is just like today we have this sound waves traveling across, right? Sound waves we cannot see, but sound waves are there all over. So today this mic is able to capture what I am speaking. That's because the moment I speak the words, those get converted into sound waves, and this mic is able to receive the waves, and then it is able to transmit that waves through the network, and it comes to your computer or phone, and then these waves are then again retransmitted or again they are actually reconverted into sound, so that you are able to listen to what I say. So just like this, the rishis have been able to receive these waves that were there in the universe. They have been able to convert that into words, and then they have been able to give us the Vedas. So they gave us Vedas capturing from space, which with our intellect and with our lessons of tapas that we have, we would not have heard at all. And that is why some rishis we are called as mantra drishtas, mantra drishtara. Those who have seen the mantras, those who have received the mantras. So they are not the producers or creators of the mantras. And in those days, once the rishis came with these mantras, they actually moved it to the next generation only through Shabda Rupa only. Nobody wrote in those days. They were not written. The Vedas were not written. The rishis then actually transmitted to their disciples only verbally. So they had these gurukulas, patashalas, where they would actually chant these Veda mantras, and then the students will repeat it. They will memorize it. They will understand it, and then to the next generation, the students will become gurus, and they will transmit that again. So it will always done. It was an oral tradition. It was never a written tradition. And the Shishyas have to hear them and then learn them, and they have to memorize them, because nothing was written. All the Shishyas had to memorize them. And because it was heard and then taken to the next generation, it is called as Shruti. Guru Sakshat Shruyate iti Shruti. That which was heard through the Gurus is called as Shruti. So when we say Shruti, sometimes we say Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram. That Shruti there means the Vedas. So in those days, each person had to learn, memorize, and teach the entire scripture. And Vedas are vast. They have to memorize and then take it to the next generation. But at the end of Dwapara Yuga, at the onset of Kali Yuga, Vedavyasa decided that the Vedas will be divided into 4. Because he knew that the next Kali Yuga people will not be able to memorize the entire Vedas. So he actually divided the Vedas into 4. Rig, Yajur, Sama and Atharvana Veda. So there are 4 parts to the Vedas: Rig, Yajur, Sama and Atharvana. Rig Vedas are Rig mantras, which are basically metrical composition. They are poetic compositions. They are called as Padya compositions. So they are all metrical. They would be some kind of poetical. And then Yajur Veda are all prose. These are mantras which are all prose. So what we say is Gadya Rupena, it will be in paragraphs. Sama Veda are basically the Sama mantras which are in the form of music. Or we say Giti Rupa Mantra. They are set to music. In fact, we say that the Indian music itself is derived from Samaveda. And that is why when somebody actually does a Parayanam of Samaveda, we don't say Sama Parayanam, Samaveda Parayanam, we say Samaganam, because it is actually sung. And then the final is Atharvana Veda, which consists of mantras given by mainly two rishis who were the mantra drishtas for this. That is called Adarva Rishi and Angirasa Rishi. And therefore this is known as Atharvana Veda. So Veda Vyasa divided the entire Vedas into 4. And the word mantra, whenever we use the word mantra, it is only for the Vedic composition we use mantras. When I say mantra, or when anybody says mantra, it has to be in the Vedas. Anything other than Vedas, we don't call them as mantras. And similarly, everything in the Vedas, we call them only as mantras. And these Vedas are our pramanam. Our pramanam means what? Source of knowledge. These are the primary and foremost scriptures for us. This is our guide. This is our manual. So when Ishvara created this world, or when Ishvara created this world, this universe was Srishti. During Srishti, he gave this Vedas. The Vedas are the manuals. They are the primary source of our knowledge. They are on the basis of which we should lead our lives. And that is why our culture is called as Vedic culture. We call ourselves as Vaidika Sampradaya. Anybody who is in this Bharatavarsha, this culture, this ancient Sanatana Dharma civilization, we also call them as Vaidikas, because we are all followers of Vaidika Sampradaya. This name Hindu was given by somebody else because they didn't understand this. They saw that anybody who was on the other side of the Indus River, they called them as Hindus. But for us, we are Vaidikas, Vaidika Sampradaya, or Sanatana Dharma. Our Dharma is called as Sanatana Dharma. Is there similarity between Rig and Samaveda as they are both said to meter? No, Rig Veda is poetic, Samaveda is Gana, but a lot of these Rig Vedas are repeated in Samavedas in poetic form. So the same mantras may be found in Samaveda also in poetic form. So that is the first layer of our Shastras, called as Vedas, also called as Shruti. The second set of literature is called Sutras, which we will see in the next class. If there are any questions, you may want to type it here and then we'll try to answer them. Ganam and Ganam. Yes, there is a lot of difference between Ganam and Ganam. There is called as Ganapati. In Vedas, especially Yajur and Rig Vedas, there is called as Ganaparayanam. There is called as, when you chant Vedas, it is chanted in different forms to be able to take it to the next generation. So normally you chant the entire sentence, then they chant splitting the words so that you don't forget it. When you split the words, the grammar rules will have to be followed. And then to make sure that you don't forget it, they do it as Krama Parayanam, Jatai Parayanam and Ghana Parayanam. And there is a rule to it. So in Krama it is 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, something like that. And then in Jatai is 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, like that. So in Ganam, the combination is even more difficult to remember. But our tradition, students have been trained on this. And Ganaparayanam, Ganapati is a difficult one to achieve. That's why we say somebody, when we say, we don't call them just like a Shastrigal or a Purohit, we say he's a Ganapati, which means he has done the difficult one. Ganam is singing. Do the Vedas not need an upgrade? I don't know what does that mean. Vedas not need an upgrade. I think you mean whether it is relevant for today's world. I think it is relevant always. It is ever relevant. Vedas are always relevant. It is never gone out of syllabus or out of scope. Is there an option today to learn Vedas orally like earlier days? There are Patashalas which teach Vedas. There are certain rules for actually learning Vedas. Those are being followed, and there are some Patashalas which still do teach Vedas like in olden days. Can you please recommend some authors' books to read and understand Vedas in simple language? Okay, I will once we will complete all the 6 layers of this Shastras, I will answer that, because you will have some answers when I discuss that. Okay, for Pushkala. Ready? As I said, I mean, Sundar, Vedas will have to be learnt with in a traditional manner. There is Patashalas, but to understand what is being said in Vedas, there are other options available, which we will discuss in the next class. Okay. Any other questions? As it has been transmitted through Shruti, could there be changes anyway? No. That is the reason why all this Jatai, Kramam, Ganam have all been done. Today also, if you take anybody who is chanting Vedas in the south of India and then get somebody to chant from the north of India, they will be one and the same. Our oral tradition has been so foolproof. The tradition has been made so foolproof that nobody can actually make mistakes, because the way it has been taught. There is a big subject on that as well. Somebody is typing. I'm waiting for that before we close the class. Okay, nobody is typing anymore. We'll close the class here and we'll meet in the next class. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Swasti Prajabhya Paripalayantam Nyayena Margena Mahimahishaha. Gobrahmanebhyo Shubhamastu Nityam Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah.